today's event. Okay, the first of all, a very good evening, Aditya Bhaiya. So I'll be starting with some of the intro, and we can proceed for today's event. So, hello, folks. A very warm welcome for today's event. Today's session will be having a very exciting event today. The person who is with us today is full with joy and achievements that you will be happy to know one by one. I'll be coming back to that. Before we proceed, I'd like to say that we Developer Student Club, Lovely Professional University, has taken this initiative to grow and work together to upgrade this community in order to have a good achievements for this student community as well. So as we know that we are heading forward to have our Student Developer Solution Challenge 2021. So we actually organized a lot of workshops so that in order to make you also understand that how to participate, we brought a lot of Google developer experts, many many developer research analysts, and a lot of the professionals in their respective domains, so that you can get to know what are the industry needs, how to start with project, team building, project analysis, reviewing from your fellow students and customers and the societies, so that you can make the best product out of it. And hope you all are aware that we are having 17 sustainable development goals, and last date of participating and filling in the form is 31st of March for the solution challenge. Hope you guys are really excited for towards that. And coming back to today's event, as you all know that today's event is March with Machine Learning. So today among us there's a person who is very well known, has been given talks, having given webinars, and also being invited at several other places. A person who has got ranked about 60, All India rank 60 in GATE. He's also doing his masters in IIT Bombay, the most prestigious organization, institute in our globe. And he's also doing his research in machine learning, data science. He's like glove domain. He's also the analyst. He's also is a content developer in Study Together, like creating content, helping students to grow. He's also writing papers on natural machine translation, spoken machine translation, and he's also the SD intern at Amazon. He's none other than Mr. Aditya Jain. I'd like to welcome Mr. Aditya Jain for our talk show to enlighten our audience in order to help them out with machine learning, learning with machine, learning with models, data science, and how this particular topic can help in order to make good products for the hackathon. So yeah, Aditya Bhaiya, like if I have made some justice to your introduction, you can please start.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. That was really great. So yeah, a very good evening, everyone. I'm really glad to be a part of this session. Personally, I have always thought of being a member of Google DSC as one of the most interesting experience that I've had till now. So thanks for that. So shall I start with the presentation or?
I think before moving forward to it, I'll love to ask you a few things. Like you are having an amazing journey throughout it. So why don't you start? Like, what was the inspiration behind who is Aditya Jain today? Like, did you thought about becoming today who is Aditya Jain today? Like 4 years back or 2 years back, your starting journey, like towards your technology or any sort of that. Yeah, please. A small glimpse.
Okay, sure. So yeah, I would be very honest with all of this. So yeah, first of all, even I entered this field as just another guy who wanted to have a good future or a safe future. So I chose computer science over all fields. But yeah, as everyone knows that we are not much aware at that point of time. So yeah, I started my engineering. I was in first year, second year I completed them. But in the second year, I realized that I should be doing something extra than just studying for the college exams and just passing it and then getting a job. So yeah, I decided to explore myself. I started learning various skills. I became a part of the Google DSC that visited a college that opened up the college faculty members. So yeah, that brought me to the whole new experiences. I came to know that what are the fields that people work on, what extra work that is to be done in order to achieve something good rather than just a secure future. So yeah, from that point of time, I started exploring myself. I started learning new skills. I started hanging out with like-minded people. I started networking. not just from the technical point of view, but also from the knowledgeable point of view. Like I just wanted to broaden the horizons of what I think, how I think it. So in around third year, I decided to pursue higher studies because I wanted to explore the field of data science, which was not pretty much covered at my college during bachelor's. So I decided to pursue higher studies. Then I studied very rigorously for GATE exam, which is the exam that you need to crack to enter the prestigious colleges like IIT and ISC Bangalore or various NITs. So my aim was fixed that if I need to do masters, it would be either IIT Bombay or ISC Bangalore. So I knew that in order to achieve this, I would have to be very serious about my studies. And only like top 100 rankers get into these colleges. So I was pretty much serious about it from the first day itself. So I knew that when I'll be preparing for GATE exam, it won't be very much aligned with the requirements for the company placements. And in order to have a secure job in hand, I first started with learning various skills that would help me secure a better placement during college campus interviews. So I started with competitive coding. I started learning various subjective knowledge that is required to crack those interviews. So this was like third year or something that I started with all these skills. I started giving a lot of time to competitive coding, and believe me, it is one of the most challenging stuff that I have experienced till date, like the competitive coding. So I spent a lot of time understanding what is to be done, learning how one should improve upon it. Practice. I used to practice a lot, and all this thing went before I started with the GATE preparation. So once I was done with this at a particular level, I stopped all of those activities and just put myself into GATE preparation. So I used to study a lot for cracking this exam. Then in the meanwhile, college placements were there. So I secured a placement at the first company that visited, which was Barclays, Pune. So I secured a job there, and then I was very much happy that I don't need to worry what will happen if I don't crack the exam or anything. So I was very much chill about getting a placement. Then I switched off everything and just focused on my aim, which was to get a under 100 rank in GATE exam, so that I get the college of my choice. So I gave GATE exam in like Feb 2019. And just after that, Amazon visited our college for full campus interviews. So as I was very much thorough with the subject knowledge that I have learned throughout for the GATE preparation, and also as I mentioned that I've done competitive coding way before then. So I just gave it a shot, like why not try this campus interview as well. So I appeared for it, I cracked it. Like I was one among the 2 students from the campus to get selected for the 6 months internship. So the internship started in the Feb itself. So I was very much happy that everything was getting aligned one after another rather than just coming all together at once. So after giving GATE exam, I joined Amazon. I was completing my 6 months internship there. So while working at Amazon, it hit me that it is very much required to get into the field of data science when you are being a part of such a big organization like Amazon, because there's a lot of data and there's a lot of machinery that is need to be taken care of in order to get the most out of these systems. So it was then that my interest for data science improved a lot. So once the GATE results were announced, I secured All India rank 60, and I knew that this rank would help me get to the college of my choice, which was IIT Bombay. So I had gone through the entire application process. I applied only to 2 or 3 colleges which I wanted to join. The rest I didn't apply. So once I got the college of my choice, I decided that I'll leave the job here itself and will continue with the higher studies so that I could get into the data science stream as a working professional. So now after joining IIT Bombay, as my aim was clear that I would enjoy the campus life. Along with that, I'll make the best out of it. So I started exploring the field of data science. I took all the relevant courses in that. I studied AI. I studied introduction to machine learning. I studied natural language processing and deep learning. All these courses I took because, as I mentioned, that my aim was pretty much clear that I want to get into this field. So I took I done various assignments into this field. I joined the project guide which belonged to this field, specifically machine translation, which comes under natural language processing. So I took relevant courses, relevant projects, relevant assignments, and then got very much into this field. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. So this was the journey, and I'm looking forward to get into this field at a bit higher level as well, just to broaden my knowledge for the same.
Yeah, that was amazing. So I'll
Okay,
be
so it's a very
okay. Yeah, I'll be.
it's a very amazing and awesome lifestyle that you have gone through, and it's not easy to go through that. So I'll request to Bose to continue with the session.
Yeah, exactly, Manoj bhai. Yeah, it wasn't that easy. So it was an amazing journey. So I'll be segregating so that student can take most out of it. Like your pre-gate phase, like you got Barclay, you got into like Amazon, like different other organizations. You have also prepared for the gate and the big product-based companies parallelly, like manage your time. After that, you got into IITs. You have researched well. You have published many articles. You have done research in machine learning and data science. And after that, you created a content, and also you have been a part of a Google Global Solution like program, like DSC, like big global community. So you all have done everything a normal student dream for, right? So pretty much everything will be taking a few of the questions inside of it, but our major focus should be how to get started with machine learning in order to is that we are having a lot of myths in as a student. So today Aditya Bhaiya is going to clear all the myths, disclose the veil from our eyes, what to do and what not to. And after also we'll be getting a lot of queries like how to get into product-based company. Parallelly, being one of the most successful students across India, how we managed to crack and all. So I have in my mind different set of question. I'm asking all the attendees, please shoot the question. I'll be putting in a stack. So yeah, Bhaiya, like you can start from the PPT and your presentation, what all you have brought for us, and we will start questioning after that, please.
Yeah, sure. So as I'm also a student, so I know it very much that people don't get too much out of the long presentations and very complicated ones as well. So I'll try to keep it very short, very concise, and I'll just give you an overview of the field of ML. So I'm repeating that I won't be covering the mathematical aspects that goes into this field, because believe me that machine learning is more about mathematics than computer science. Okay, so yeah, so I'll be just covering the overview point of view of it, and then we can discuss the details after that. So I'll just share my screen. Please let me know if it is visible or not. I hope it is.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, sure. So yeah, so let's get started with the presentation. So this is just a small thing that I've prepared. There might be some mistakes. If you come across this, do let me know and we can improve upon it. So these are the various contents that I'm going to cover. First, I'll start with what is ML, like machine learning, types of ML algorithms, like the various categories that it belongs to, the challenges in machine learning field, the ensemble-based learning, which is proven to be one of the most efficient solution to these challenges, the various applications of ML. So as we engineers don't just learn something if it is not applied in real world, right? So this is very much important from the application point of view as well. Then we'll understand what is human versus machine. So as we know that there's a lot of hype going on in the market that robots are going to replace machines, and eventually there will be no jobs for the human beings and it would be replaced by the robots. So we'll understand, is it really so? Like, are they really much capable enough to replicate the human beings? So we'll talk about it from my point of view just. And finally, we'll have a case study where I'll be discussing a very real life example of machine learning use cases, which is banking loan approval. And finally, a disclaimer that we'll just cover the overview without getting into the mathematical details. Okay, so it might look simple, but it is not that simple in the way I'm showing it to you. So just focus on understanding the various categories, the various overview of the field without getting into the details. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, what is ML? So going to the technical terms, machine learning algorithms enable the computers to learn from data and even improve themselves without being explicitly programmed. Okay, so we computer science students write a lot of code, and code is just like if else, and it follows a like structure. Like if something enters, then this particular piece of code will be executed. If something doesn't enter, then this particular field of piece of code will be executed. So as we know that it is a very much programmed. like it does not have a brain of its own. Whatever we ask it to do, it just do it. Okay, so this is like a static program. But machine learning is far away from this. Machine learning is like it's like something, a machine which learns on its own. So let's relate it to a very real life problem. So suppose there is a newborn baby. Okay, so he's just 1 or 2 months old, or just 1 year old. Okay, one year old. So we don't expect him to read, write, and everything. Okay, it's like a continuous process. We first provide him with the various environment. Then he learns on its own what should do, what is good, what is not good, what one should eat, what is eatable, what is not eatable. So as you know that when it is getting access to the environment, it is learning on its own. Okay, it's not just like if you give him a book, he'll read continuously and in 1 year he'll get the knowledge of a 10-year-old person. No, it is not that. It's a continuous process, and it gets developed day by day as soon as the number of information gets accumulated in a better manner. So similar is the case with the machine with a machine learning model. Consider a model as a newborn baby. Whatever you give it as data, as input, it will learn from it, and it will understand, and it will improvise accordingly. So machine learning is a field which, when provided with data, learns on its own and improves upon the task to be done. So how do you measure the improvement for a human being? When someone scores better marks, we label them as an intelligent person, even though it might not be a correct way to label, but yeah, this is what is done. Okay, so similarly in machine learning algorithms, we work with the error analysis. So if it is giving a high error, so it is not a good machine learning algorithm. If it is learning and accurating over the predictions, so then we decide, yeah, it has learned a lot, and yeah, we can use it for solving real life problems. So coming to the types of machine learning, so there might be various types, but these three are the most broadened sort of machine learning algorithms that you will come across. So first is supervised, second is unsupervised, and third is reinforcement learning. So we usually, like personally, I work in the domain of supervised learning, but there are two fields as well, which is unsupervised and reinforcement learning. So what is supervised learning? So supervised learning, as the name suggests, that it is under supervision. Okay, so supervised learning deals with the labeled data. So what is labeled data? So when you give it a set of input, you also give it the possible outputs for it. Okay, so I'll be discussing what is supervised learning. So it deals with the labeled data. It is direct feedback mechanism, and it predicts the outcome or future. Okay, so it's like prediction, or it's like just deciding the outcome of a particular model. Second is unsupervised learning. So with supervised, we were dealing with the labeled data, but with unsupervised, we'll deal with no data which has no labels. So like it has the set of inputs, but it doesn't know the set of outputs. So this is called as no labeled or unlabeled data. So there is no feedback mechanism. And finally, we find the hidden structure in the data. So as I mentioned that there is no output, so you just need to found the structure within the data given to you, and you need to divide it among various groups that we are going to understand in the upcoming slides. And the third, which is mostly used in the field of gaming and everything, so it's called reinforcement learning. So it is like a decision process. Each time a machine is provided with a set of decisions, and it is based on the reward system. So machine is provided with a particular score if it does the correct thing, and with a particular penalty when it performs the wrong thing. And as the human being learns from his mistakes, so similar is the case with the machine learning reinforcement learning models. They learn from the mistakes that they have done, and they improvise accordingly. So it's like series of actions on the basis of the reward system. So in the broader aspect, like I have discussed, supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement, right? So here you can see, even you might not be able to look at the smaller things, but yeah, this is machine learning, there is supervised learning, there is unsupervised learning, and there's reinforcement learning. So I'll just quickly go through the various categories that various problems belong to. So like supervised learning, you may take as example the image classification problem. So you have given the model with the various set of images of dogs and cats, and you are asking it to whether the given image is dog or cat. Okay, so this is like image classification. So you can relate it with real life examples like the image monitoring systems or image recognition. So your cell phone lock screen it is like image classification. Whenever a person who is the owner of the cell phone is logging into it, it will allow, and otherwise it will disallow. So it is like a real life example of classification, specifically image classification. Second is identification for fraud detection. When a person is dealing with credit cards, so it should know that whether it's a fraud or it's a non-fraud detection system. So this is another use case. Customer retention, like how many customers will retain after a 1 year of period and how many will leave this business. So this is another. And diagnostics. So in case of medical sciences, there's like diagnosis of cancer, whether the patient is diagnosed with cancer or not. So all these things are like classification problems, whether a particular person is diagnosed with cancer or not. So it's like a binary classification problem. The word binary refers to that it has only two possible outcomes, whether it would be cancer or it won't be having cancer. Similarly, it's like spam detection. When you receive a particular mail, either it could be a spam or it couldn't be a spam. Okay, so it's like a binary classification problem. And there is multi-classification problem. Like if you are given the model of picture of a fruit, so it has to decide among the various, like banana, apple, orange, mango. So there are various classes, and the model will decide which category this fruit belongs to. So it's an example of multi-class classification problem. Now coming to regression technique. So supervised has two, classification and regression. So coming to the regression technique, regression is like just predicting the possible value outcome of a given data. So it's like advertising popularity prediction. So if you're given with the charts and various data, it will decide how many folds or how many percentage your popularity of advertising has improved this month. It's like weather forecasting. What is the probability of having a rainy day tomorrow, and what is the probability of having a sunny day tomorrow? So all this which deals with a particular value, the probability value, is called as a regression technique. Similarly, market forecasting. So the ones who deal with stock market, they need to have a certain figures, like what is the estimated price that this stock will reach to. So it's like market forecasting, estimating life expectancy, and population growth prediction. So after 2 years, what would be the population growth? How many percentage would there be increase? So as you know, that classification deals with like either this class or this class, but regression deals with predicting a real value. So we are going to discuss this, but these are the two major differences between the two techniques. Now coming to unsupervised, there are basically two, like clustering problem. So cluster is like as the name suggests, cluster is like a group of things. Okay, so customer segmentation is a clustering problem. Now on the basis of the purchase of the goods, one can decide whether this customer belongs to the high category who does a lot of purchase, who spends a lot, or medium category who spends in a particular limit, or who doesn't spend at all. Okay, so this is like customer segmentation. So you may understand that the YouTube recommendation system might work on this system, like what are the specific customers that they need to aim for this particular ad. Okay, so all these things belong to this clustering problem. Like given a set of classes, which class should be put forward to which person. Okay, so it's like clustering. Targeted marketing. So as I suggested, if it is an ad of a MBA college, so it should be redirected to a person who is pursuing MBA rather than a person who is like 60 years old. Okay, if it is a life insurance ad, so it should be directed to a very matured person rather than a kid. If it is a toy ad, so it should be redirected to a kid rather than to a working professional. So all these things are like a clustering problem, and targeted marketing is one of the way to achieve this. The third one is like dimensionality reduction, which is again as unsupervised learning. So as the name suggests, dimensionality is to be reduced. So if there are multiple features that we need to decide the outcome from, so dimensionality reduction helps us just looking at the important features among them. So for example, if you are predicting the price of stock tomorrow, okay, like any other thing, so it would help you decide what are the major factors that it would help you to decide, and what are the not so important factors. So like if you talk about YouTube recommendation system, okay, so there are various factors like gender, age, and income, and college. So there might be various factors, but the recommendation system will help you decide which are the most important factors. So in this case, income has nothing to do with the ad showing, but the age group that the person belongs to or the gender that the person belongs to will help the model segregate a lot between which ad should be shown to which person. So this is an example of dimensional reduction, where a number of features are to be reduced to a certain limit, and not so important features are just neglected in order to help the model learn in a better manner. And lastly, coming to the reinforcement learning, so it is like gaming AI. So as you know that on the basis of the action you do, the various environment of the game industry changes. So skill acquisition, learning task, robot navigation. So robot is just made to play in the environment, and on the basis of the feedback provided by the environment, it learns whether one should do this or not, so it is a good task or not. So all these things are just the overview of the various types of machine learning algorithms. So coming in detail to the supervised machine learning algorithm, this is the basic or the mostly used example for explaining the supervised machine learning. So this is an example of classification problem. So let me just confirm, am I audible?
Audible completely. Everything is fine.
Okay, sure. Yeah, okay. So coming to this particular example, as the name suggests, it is a supervised machine learning algorithm. So as I have mentioned it earlier, supervised means you are providing it with the input as well as the output. Okay, so let me explain you what is input and output here. So suppose you are giving the model a set of mails. Okay, so mails are the set of inputs, and you are also providing them with the label whether this mail is spam and this mail is spam or not. Okay, so this is like a labeled data, and hence the task is supervised machine learning. You are providing the model with the data which is labeled. Like if a particular mail is given, you are giving the label along with it. Like this particular mail is spam, this particular mail is again spam, but this particular mail is not spam. So there is thousands and lakhs of such mails that you give model for training, and as the word suggests, you train the model. So when you are a kid, you go and play a lot. Like on the basis of your experience, you get trained. Okay, so when you prepare for a particular sport, you learn a particular skill. So there is a lot of input that you take, and then you decide, and then you learn from it. Okay, so this particular part is like called training or learning. So similarly, as compared to the newborn baby, you can compare your model which has no information as of now. So you're providing it with the data which is labeled in nature. So you will provide it with a lot of data, and you will help it understand what to be marked as spam, what should not be marked as not spam, and so on. Okay, so this particular part belongs to the part of training, where you provide it with supervised data and you train it. Then you provide it with unknown data. Okay, so for example, when you're practicing to play cricket, okay, so you might ask a bowler to throw a spin ball, and then to throw a fast ball, and so on. So you know, but when you're provided with an unknown bowler, okay, so you're not sure whether it would be in swing, out swing, and so on. So when you are providing the model with an unseen data, and then it provides the prediction whether this should be marked as spam or whether this should not be marked as not spam. Okay, so this is a classical example of supervised machine learning algorithm, and specifically classification. And within classification, as there are only two possible classes, which are spam and not spam, so we will call it a binary classification problem. Okay, so there can be multiple classes as well. So if provided with a fruit, you need to decide whether this fruit belongs to the category of mango, orange, banana, apple, and so on. But this is a binary classification problem. So the word binary refers to only two possible outcomes: spam, not spam, having cancer or not having cancer. Okay, so this is the very first example. So I hope that you have understood it. We'll come to this in the later section as well. Now, as the name suggests, types of supervised machine learning algorithms. Okay, so the previous example that we have covered is like classification, which is spam, not spam. So a classification problem is when the output variable is a category, such as red or blue or disease or no disease. Okay, so when provided with a ball, you need to decide whether this is a red ball or a blue ball. So all these are like classification problem. As the name suggests, classify. You need to classify the object into the various classes that are available. Now the second type is regression. So regression is like giving a value as output. So a regression problem is when the output variable is a real value, such as dollars or weight. So you can relate profit prediction of a particular company. Okay, so when you see the various reports provided by the company that we are estimating a profit of over 50% in this financial year. So all these problems are regression problems. How do they predict? They train a model on the basis of the previous made profits of the company, the goods that they have created, the purchase that have been done, the sales, the marketing, each and everything is provided to the model, and on the basis of that it learns and then provide with the profit prediction. Okay, so this is just the simplest example of two classes, which are classification and regression. So both of these belong to the supervised machine learning. Now coming to the unsupervised machine learning. So yeah, let's come back here. So as you know that here we were providing the model, or we were training the model with the help of the supervised data or the labeled data, which were having the label along with it, like this particular mail should be marked as not spam, this mail should be marked as spam. Okay, but here as you can see, the input data is not having label. So you're not telling model this is apple and this is watermelon, this is apple, this is watermelon. No, you just provide the model with a huge set of images, and the model will learn on its own whether all these fruits belong to one category and all these fruits belong to another category. Okay, so this is another one simplest example. It is not as simple as it looks, but yeah, this is the end-to-end problem. Like you provide it with the unlabeled data. Why I'm calling it unlabeled? Because you're just providing it with the input values. Like this is one fruit, this is another fruit. You're not providing which fruit is what. Okay, so you're just randomly picking two sets of fruits and you're providing it to the model, and then it is grouping the two sets in a different way. So here it doesn't know this is apple, this is apple. It is just grouping them on the basis of various factors and on the basis of various parameters that the input data is provided with. Okay, so coming to the categories of it should be unsupervised here. Let me just straight away edit this. Okay. So yeah, coming to the types of unsupervised machine learning, one is clustering and another is association. So first, let's understand what is clustering. So as the name suggests, you need to group the data into various clusters. So here I have taken a very basic example. So you are providing model with a lots of shapes and colors, and then the clustering model will just make clusters depending on the various types of items. So this is made one cluster, the green balls are made one clusters, the blue diamonds are made one clusters, and so on. Okay, so this is just the basic clustering problem. So a clustering problem is where you want to discover the inherent groupings in the data, such as grouping customers by purchasing behavior. So as I have suggested, as I've already told, that the data is not labeled. You don't know whether this person should be marked as higher purchasing behavior, this person marked as lower purchasing behavior. No, you're just providing it with the spending of the customers, and the model will itself decide after training that this should be marked as higher purchasing, this should be marked as lower purchasing, and so on. So this is a clustering problem where you need to group various set of people into one group. Like these are the set of higher purchasing power customers, these are the set of lower purchasing power customers. There's no limit like below 20,000 it should be higher clustering. No, there is nothing like that. It takes the data, it understands the various behavior among the data, and then it clusters them into various groups. Now coming to the second category, which is association. Okay, so an association rule is learning problem where you want to discover rules that describe large portions of your data, such as people that buy X also tend to buy Y. So let's take a very basic example here. So if a person buys a Kinder Joy, okay, Kinder Joy is, as you know, that it's a chocolate made for very small kids. Okay, so if a person buys Kinder Joy, he is very likely to buy a Cadbury as well. Okay, so but if a person is buying what you can say a drink or anything, okay, so it is not that much likely to buy a Cadbury. Okay, so this is like an association mapping. On the basis of the data, you understand when a person buys this, he also tends to buy this. Okay, so let's take a very basic example, and I know that you might be able to relate to this. So when you go to a shopping mall, okay, so you see that various set of products are made in such a way that they are related to each other. So when you go to the kirana shopping place, okay, so you see that all the food grains are kept along with the products that are used in day-to-day life. Okay, so a lady who is going to purchase the food grains is most likely to purchase the other products as well. Okay, but when you go to the men's section, there are no food grains and there are no like other items that he's unlikely to purchase. Okay, so there you might see shaving cream, and there you will see other men's product. Okay, so it is like a person who is able to purchase this is most likely to purchase this. And when you go to a cash counter, you see that there are various products that a person might not have planned to purchase, but on the basis of standing so much to wait in a line, he might get tempted to purchase. Like, you'll always see Cadbury, or you'll always see some minute stuff like the biscuits or anything like that near the cash counter. So it is made like the association mapping. A person who is waiting for a long might feel that a kid should have this. If a kid is standing for a long time along with his parents, so he's most likely to tell, I want this to purchase. So it's like a business model that the machine provides you with, that if a person is purchasing this, he's most likely to purchase this as well. So keep it along with this product. So it's like clustering problem again. Okay. So coming to the third category, which is like reinforcement learning. So this is a very classical example. So I'll help you understand. So there is a fire and there is water. Okay. And a robot or an agent is like, he doesn't know anything. Okay. He's just new to the environment. So what he'll do is he'll first touch the fire. Suppose he'll pick fire. So the machine will give it a feedback of -50 points. Okay. So this is like negative points. Okay, so get reward or penalty. Reward means +50, and when he does the good thing or when he does what was required, and negative points for when he does the opposite of what was required. Okay, so when you are a kid, you do some good behavior, so your parents appreciate it. Okay, so it's like a reward for that. But when you do bad things, or you are not or you are misbehaving, so it's like you are giving penalty for it. So you understand, okay, this should not be done from later on, even though you end up doing it again and again. But this is how the machine learns as well. So from the next time when the machine goes to fire, it will know that it had updated its policy that touching fire is not a good thing. It has given me -50 points previously. So now it will understand that this is good, this is bad, and it will avoid going to those parts. Okay, so it will update the policy or the learning on the basis of the feedback provided, and iterate until an optimal policy is found. So until the model is very much trained regarding what is to be chosen, which is not to be chosen, it will keep repeating and keep understanding from that. So explaining more to the previous example, we can see that the agent is given two options, which is path with water and path with fire. A reinforcement algorithm works on reward of a system. That is, if the agent uses the fire path, then rewards are subtracted, and agent tries to learn that it should avoid the fire path. So whenever you get a negative feedback, you understand whenever you touch a thing which is very hot, okay, so you understand, okay, this is not to be done from the next time because this might lead to injuries and so on. So this is same with the machine. It doesn't know whether this is good or bad. On the basis of the feedback you provided, if you give +50 points, so it understand, okay, this is a good thing, it is increasing my score. But if you give it a negative score, though, so it understand, no, this is a bad score and I should improve upon that. So similar is the case with machines as well as humans. So if it had chosen the water path or safe path, then some points would have been added to the reward points, and the agent then would try to learn path which is safe, okay, because it is increasing its score. So it is basically leveraging the rewards obtained. The agent improves its environment and knowledge for the next action. So on the basis of its previous experience, as we humans do, on the basis of our previous experience, we understand whether certain thing is good and should be done more and more, and which should be avoided. So similar is the case with reinforcement learning. So as you know that this field requires a lot of data and lot of resources in order to give good predictions. So there are various set of challenges that it faces. So first is data scarcity. So you're just providing the data, you're just providing the model with a very less data, like just 10 samples of spam and not spam. Okay, so it won't be able to provide accuracy in the results. Okay, why? Because if you're a human being and you have only tried something twice or thrice, so you won't be giving that much accurate results. But if you have practiced that 100 times or 1,000 times, then you will be very much accurate at it. Okay, so there are various quotes like, I don't fear a person who has tried 1,000 things one time, but I fear a person who has tried one thing 1,000 times. So it comes from this. If you have tried something, just one thing 1,000 times, so you will be very much accurate into it. But you are just trying one thing, all the things one at a time, so this won't work, right? You won't be very much accurate in your results. So this is the same with the model. If you provide it a lot of data, it will train on a lot of data, and it will be able to classify or provide you with the predictions which are very of high accuracy. And coming to the second problem, which is overfitting and underfitting. So I'll just explain you with the help of an example. So these two are very technical terms. So as you can see in the underfitting graph, there are various data points, and the prediction line, which is in red color, is just a straight line. Okay. So as you know, this is underfitting. Underfitting means it is not providing very much accurate results. Okay. So when does this happen? When the model is provided with a very less data, and it is not learning the complex relationships. Okay. So it is a very simple model. You will just ask it to predict y equals to x without irrespective of the input data provided. So it is an example of underfitting. Now let's come to overfitting. So just completely opposite of it. In order to get the best out of it, you will train it with a lot of data. With a lot of data, you'll be very specific about what is to be predicted when. So then the model will predict something by just going to the midpoints of all the crosses. So as you can see, it is covering all the crosses in a very weird manner. Okay. So this is the problem of overfitting. But the ideal fitting, which is the ideal balance, is the third one, which is like it should not cover each and every point in the best possible way, but it should be very much able to capture the relationship. Okay. So what is the problem of overfitting? You might think that, yeah, this is better because it is covering each and every in a better manner. So let's take an example. Okay. So one more thing, in machine learning, you should learn each and everything with the help of example. Then only you'll be able to remember concepts without learning them by heart. Okay. So learning doesn't work in machine learning. That's a fact. You should understand and relate it with the real life examples, and then only you'll be able to understand it. So suppose you are training a model that whenever you see a circular thing, you should classify it as ball. Okay. So when you will be providing it with orange, which is circular in shape, it will also be classifying it as ball, because you have provided it with only one rule. If the shape is circle, then it should be a ball. Okay. So this is like underfitting. You had just provided it with a very simple algorithm, even though the mappings would be complex. Okay. So this is underfitting. You're not just telling it whenever circular things come, you should classify it as ball. So whenever an orange, which is circular in nature, comes, it will also be classifying it as ball rather than orange. Now coming to overfitting. Now you have seen that, yeah, when you give a very less amount of very less amount of rules, so it predicts in a very bad manner. So you will tell it that, yeah, whenever a thing is circular, and when it is having a radius of 5 centimeter, and when it is red in color, then this should be marked as ball. Okay. So as you can see, you are very specific about the classification. Now, what if a basketball comes, which is blue in color? It will not be classifying it as a ball, because it is not of 5 centimeter radius, it is of 10 centimeter radius, and it is of blue color rather than red color. So as you can see, even though it's a ball, it would be classified as not a ball. So this is the example of overfitting, and the ideal would be training it on the various balls provided as input, and then it can predict the output. Now, ensemble learning is another learning kind of category, which provides us with bagging and boosting algorithms. So these are very advanced concepts, and that's why I'll be explaining you only the basics of it. So bagging deals with a method of merging the same type of predictions from different models and merging them to provide the output. And boosting is like referring to various algorithms and converting weak learners to strong learners. So we'll just have a simple look at both of these. So this is the original data D. You are dividing it into multiple clusters, D1, D2, D3, and so on. Okay, and on the basis of each data, you are training one model, C1, C2, C3, and so on. So D1, D2 are the set of data which are divided from D, and then C1, C2 are the various models that you have trained. Now, when you combine all these models' output into one, so for example, if you are dealing with a classification problem, so what you'll do, you'll simply take the so if you are dealing with binary classification problem, okay, so you'll simply take the average of it. Like if there are 5 number of yes and 2 number of no, so you will classify it as yes. Okay, so you will take the maximum among them. So, and when you are dealing with the regression problem, regression means when there's a need to predict the value. So if one model predicts one, another model predicts 2, and so on. So you'll just take the average among them and you'll provide it as the output. So this is the concept of bagging. Now, boosting is like converting weak learners to strong learners. So let's take a very simple example that we have covered, like marking a mail with spam or not spam. So if there is if you train your model saying that email has only one image file, then it's a spam, and email has only links, then also it's a spam. and email body consists of sentence like you won a prize of this money, then also mark it as spam. But if email is from no source, then mark it as not spam. Okay, so these are the various rules 1, 2, 3, 4 that you have provided your model with. Now, do you think that providing each of these individual rules is sufficient for high accuracy? No, right? Because let's take an example. If you get a particular link which is to a lecture from the college authorities, so your model will mark it as spam, even though it should mark, but yeah, this is the different case here. So it will mark it as spam, okay, because this is only link, and it will mark it as spam. Suppose there is an image that you have asked your friend to share, so he will not write the subject and details, he just share the image over mail and send it to you. Now the model will also mark it as spam, okay, even though there is a high probability that a mail with image should be marked as spam, your model will mark each and every mail with image as spam. So this is a problem, right? So the concept of boosting comes into play here. So as you know that each of these rules doesn't make complete sense when they are individually provided, but when they are provided all together at once, okay? So when you make the model learn from each of these rules, then it will be of higher accuracy. So this is the concept of boosting. The rules are not powerful enough to classify and mail as spam or not spam. Therefore, these rules are called as weak learner. Now you combine each of these and train the model, and then it will affect its accuracy. Now coming to the most important part, the applications, because we should only learn something if it is of great application, right? This is the mentality of an engineer. So yeah, let's look at the various applications or the real world applications of machine learning. So first one is automatic translation. So very simple example of it is like Google Translate. You provide it with a text in Hindi and it provides you text in English. So it looks very simple, right? You have just given an English sentence and it is providing the corresponding output. But do you know that what is the computation that goes beyond this? Because it is not a human being. You understand what I'm speaking in English and you can understand it in your native language. Like you can understand, you can translate it to Hindi, what I'm saying in English. But this is not that easy for a machine, okay? It needs to train on a lot of data, then only he'll be able to map the values into the numbers and so on. So another is like traffic prediction. So when you see the Google Maps showing you red color for the traffic is very high in the upcoming road. So this is all the machine learning that goes into this. What amount should be marked as red, what should be marked as green, and so on. Search engine results, again, online fraud detection that we have discussed, medical diagnosis that we have discussed, whether to classify this part of tumor as cancer or not cancer, text and speech recognition. So Alexa, Google Home, all this understand whatever the text you speak and they take necessary action. So this is again machine learning model. You train the model on the basis of the input speech. Like if this word is spoken, this is the meaning. If this word is spoken in this language, this is the meaning, and so on. So this is another example. Email spam filtering that we have looked. Image recognition. So simply your smartphones. The locking mechanism. If a particular image is detected, then only open the screen lock, otherwise don't unlock it. So these are again prediction based model, image recognition, speech recognition, medical diagnosis, financial industry that we have discussed, stock market prediction, and all those models are all these models belong to the category of machine learning. Okay, so we have discussed the examples of each. Now coming to human versus machine. Okay, so this is a very basic example. Don't think that this is so simple for a machine or anything. So let's just take an example. So suppose you need to mark your experiences when you visit a particular store or when you use a particular product. So when you write, my experience so far has been fantastic. Okay, so human being knows that this emoji along with this text is like a good thing. Okay, so this is like a perfect thing, and you will mark it as a positive sentiment. Sentiment means just behavior. You are happy with it, so positive sentiment. The product is okay, I guess. When you write this in the review, so the machine, so the human understands okay, so it is neutral, like neither positive nor the negative. And when you write, your support team is very useless. Okay, so when you get a feedback like this, you understand that it is a negative sentiment, like person is not happy with the service and you need to improve upon it. But how does the machine understand it? How do they know that this particular word should be marked as positive, this should be marked as negative? They don't. Okay, so this is the major difference between human and machine. So as you know that emotions are only understood by humans but not machines. So sentiment is also a type of an emotion, whether you have good emotion, you have bad emotion. So there's very specific field called sarcasm detection. So as you know, what is sarcasm? When you are saying something but you're conveying something else. So let's take a very basic example. when you write my experience so far has been fantastic, and you attach this particular emoji with it, okay, so you understand it. Yeah, he's giving a sarcastic reply to the product, okay, because he's telling that experience has been good, but he's attaching this particular negative emoji. So you understand that, yeah, means it is a sarcasm. The service got not so good, okay. But when you train a machine, he's not able to understand it easily, because at the one way you are providing it with a very positive text, but on the other way you are providing it with a very negative emoji, okay. And understanding emoji and converting it to sentiment is again a very big task. So this is the work which is going on at higher level, like the sentiment analysis, the sarcasm detection. So this is the simple but not yet easy difference between human and machine. They are not able to understand the words and convey the meaning out of it. They can translate one sentence to another, but meaning conveying is not that simple, okay. So yeah, just coming to case study, as we discussed that banking loan approval, if you need to make a banking loan approval system, okay, so how will you decide what would be the parameters? So let's decide age. That could be marital status. So if age is like below 13, okay, so do you expect someone below 13 years of age to give loan? No. So all these models are provided with these parameters, and on the basis of those rules, they understand whether this person should be given the bank loan or not. So if the marital status is like he's married, so then you understand, okay, he's very much responsible. So yeah, there's a high chances of getting the approval. If he's doing a job with income salary of high salary, so it is very much okay to give loan so that he can repay it afterwards. So again, there can be various multiple parameters like credit information, total amount, what is the amount that the person is asking for loan. So all these things seem very, very easy for us, okay, but the machine is not that easily conveyed the meaning out of it. They need to look at the various parameters and then decide whether the particular person should be given loan or not. So yeah, thanks a lot. I hope it was an interesting session. This was the basic things that I wanted to convey, and without going into the mathematical details of it.
Exactly.
So yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it was an eye-opening, in-depth, productive session. Like what exactly is going through in the industry, what other things are for a newbie to start with, and also people experience. They also like. I think it was more or less for everybody, from a beginner to intermediate, so that they can actually get the problem statement, as you already given a case study, like in a banking loan, like you have explained all the three classification, like unsupervised, supervised, and classification, and after that how things are working, and after that how to make a complete real life application like the banking loan section. So I'll be coming quick because we are running out of time. One question for you, Bhaiya, like how you have managed all the things like GATE, ML, CP, and many more things when we try to cope up with one of the subject other than we suffer a lot. So how you managed your mind and the time so that you didn't get distracted? I think the biggest problem is that mindset. So how you conquered that in your time, please, from your words, please.
Okay. So yeah, so coming straight to the point, like we all have a certain parameters that we want to achieve or anything. Like for someone, it would be like hanging out with friends on the daily basis, and there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, so each of us have a certain thing that we spend time with and we spend time on, and we are very serious about it. So the one thing is like I reduce the use of social media a lot, because I didn't want it to cut down the time from hanging out with friends. So I kept it working, but I cut it down the time from using the social media, right? And then I focused on my studies, because social media is like, you think that you'll use it for 5 to 10 minutes, but it kept going and going, because people like us are making it, right? They know how to make your 10 minutes into 1 hour and each and everything. So this is the most important thing. Like I was pretty much serious about what is to be done, what is not to be done. I managed my time accordingly. Like even during classes, I used to study my own stuff, or just do casual activities rather than so I was very to be frank, I was very much selective about the things I need to do and what I don't want to do. Like whether I should be focusing on this exam a lot, or just studying in order to getting passed and then focusing on the entrance exam. So I was highly selective about where I need to put my time on. And yeah, working hard is like there's no option for it. You need to work hard when you want to achieve something great or multiple things. So this is the only way you can do. So I used to study a lot during the free time. Then I used to do multitasking whenever possible, and this is how I managed my time. So planning is of most important, not the intelligence, not being smart or not smart, but planning is of highest importance.
According to you, Bhaiya, like what is as you said that priority matters. Like we need to fix the allocation of the task according to a priority. So like one question that I'm getting a lot, that is that you managed to crack one of the most valuable tech company, Amazon, as well as that it's a dream institution for millions of people, like millions of people literally. 1 million people pass every day, give every year the entrance exam, and only few handful of people get to it. So what is your own mantra, one tip that you want to convey thousands of people, thousands of students watching, to your junior also, like one thing we need to follow in order to get like the person who is preparing both the thing, like from a tier 3 college, if the person is trying to crack a good the GATE college and a good company, how to do that?
Okay. So first of all would be the time management. So be highly selective. As I mentioned that I was very much sure that I'll be appearing for GATE exam. So I started preparing for competitive coding way before that, so that later on when I'll be preparing for exam, I'll not be have to give time to this. Another would be work on something without expecting returns from it. Okay. So when you study for a particular exam, there's no guarantee that you will get a rank or not. Even before giving the exam, I was not sure about whether I'll get below 500 rank or not. Okay, but you need to study without thinking about the outcome of it. Okay, so that's why I also pursued job, as I mentioned that I've also appeared for job, because I was not sure whether I'll get the rank or not. So just it differs from person to person. For me, when I have a backup, it works very well for me. Like I already have a backup, that's why I keep the negativity out of me, whether what will happen if I don't crack, what will happen if I don't crack. So that's why I took a job, so that I have something in my mind that even if I don't crack, I have something to rely upon. And this was my way of dealing with the negativity. So just don't get into negative thoughts and each and everything, and do something without expecting returns from it. If you want to crack an exam, just study, and without thinking about what rank you can get and what you can't get. It will be decided on the day of the exam. So there's no point worrying about it.
Yeah, Manish, exactly. You have a question.
So, yeah, exactly. If we decided to, find something, so we have to, more dedicated, and we have to be more productive in that field, and we have to avoid all the thing apart from that field. So that's a very, interesting and amazing, journey that you are passing through. So, one question I would like to pick from the chat box. Generally people ask in the machine learning, I am also from the field of machine learning. So it's a very interesting question that when machine learning is employed as a robot, so it's going to take over the most of the jobs. So is there any probability that it will remove the job from the humans? What is the view on this question?
So yeah, to be frank, I'm not in a position to tell this, because even I am a beginner to this field. But yeah, let's just taking a small example. So if you come to the topic of self-driving cars, okay, so you train self-driving car when to go over a particular when there is a particular obstacle in a way, so you train it, you need to avoid this obstacle and so on. But a human being can take decisions in real time which a machine cannot take. So this is a very much distinction of it. So if a human being comes in the way, okay, so you, when you are driving, you know that you need to somehow not crash your car into that human being. Even you can take left or immediate right or anything, but you need to save that human being. Okay, so this is something that we human beings have reflexes for, and this is very hard to get into a machine, because you will tell always take right. So it won't be a good option, because always taking right might lead to another set of problems. Always taking left might lead to a certain number of problems. Giving a quick break would lead to a certain problem. So this is something which is not very much immediately inculcated into a machine. So that's why I don't think that it is very easy for a machine to replicate the human being. It can perform quick and very highly accurate results in terms of numbers. But yeah, dealing with the real life situations, it might not that be easy. So as I explained the example of sarcasm detection. So when a person is smiling and giving, when a person is making a face, a bad face, and telling you a good thing, so it is like a sarcasm. But a machine might not understand when provided it with the input. Okay, so this is another example that I think.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly. And I would like to
Manish,
also, add something in this question, that a surveys, conveyed that machine learning going to steal up the about 15 million jobs, but it will create a more than 150 million job in the future, upcoming future, as a technical job worker. So since we are upgrading machines, so we need to upgrade ourselves also, so that it's the evolution of human version 2 point something else.
Exactly.
Yeah. Continue. Ghosh.
Manish, do you have any question? Because we will be wrapping up on next 5 minutes. So I'll be taking 2 more questions and I'll be wrapping up the session. So do you have any question from your side, or shall I ask one more question from the chat box? Yeah. So
Yeah,
do you have any
one question I would like to ask. Yeah. One. So most of the person over here worried about how to start with machine learning, and one person asked that he's in third year but he want to start with machine learning. So what is the basic way to start with machine learning, so that he can grab the most of the knowledges and skill in machine learning till here final year?
Okay, so first thing would be to start with the basic, like this is the first step of each and every skill you try to learn.
Pre-requirements also.
But here the thing would be to be ready to face a lot of mathematics. Okay, I won't say that it would be easy, but if you give time to it, you'll definitely understand, because machine learns something only on the basis of the maths that you provide it with it. So you should first start with reading blogs and everything before just directly getting into books and everything. You should first understand the very easy to read content, as I mentioned, with the help of images and everything. So you should first develop the overview of each and every topic. Then you should develop the in-depth knowledge for the same. And it's like a continuous process. Even you are working in this industry, you will keep learning from the experiences that you have, as the machine does. It keeps learning from the experiences. So just think of it as a continuous process, rather than you'll learn it and then implement it all together. So that won't work from my understanding. You should learn something, you should implement it and then improve upon it, and just keep learning the specifications of it.
Absolutely, that's an excellent point, Bhaiya. Like, one more question before I wrap up. Like, you have cracked too many things, too many companies, too many institutes, and also you have done wonders. So it will be the best person to answer the question. As you have cracked Amazon for placements, how much CP or like competitive coding is necessary, or according to you only data structures or on the academic topics or subjects are more than sufficient to crack the one? Like, we have a data structure topic for GATE. Is it sufficient, or we need to do competitive coding, as this generation is moving forward to do a lot of CP and stuff and all that?
So coming to competitive coding, again, it's a very continuous process. Even I would say that I'm not that good at this field. But to be frank, you don't have to be a god level person in this field. Okay, just to crack company interviews, there are various sites. Like, I'd recommend going through InterviewBit, LeetCode. So all these have like company specific questions. So you don't have to be like a very top level person into this field. You should just need to practice one question in alternate days or anything like that. You just need to keep approaching the problems and trying to understand. So competitive coding is a must, because each and every company filters on the basis of that. The first round of each and every company would be competitive coding only. Then only on the basis of that, they will move you to the next rounds. And gaining the computer science knowledge is like a continuous process. So keep understanding the operating system, the theory behind it in each and everything. So there might be a couple of questions out of that. But coding would be there in each and every round, whichever company goes to. Okay, because it's like a problem solving skills. They don't expect the running code, but they do expect what is your approach, what is the programming paradigm, like whether the greedy approach you will use or whether you use dynamic programming. So all this play a very vital role in that, and this will definitely be getting judged. So do spend some time understanding.
Exactly. Yes, just as you said, that we need to keep one thing in mind, that priority list. Second thing is that we should be thinking in such a way that we will not receive anything. We should not keep any expectation for one particular, less skills that we are acquiring for our future goal. And CP is must for the placement purpose. And one last question, because we are running out of time, as we know that we are having some work. So one last suggestion for the newbies also going to have their hackathon. Like, what are the mantra in order to motivate after getting the hardship while learning in the process, we often get demotivated. So what was your mantra which made Aditya Jain today what he is today? So yeah, please from the person itself, yeah, please.
So yeah, to be frank, the mantra would be don't expect anything in return. Just give your 100% to whatever you do. Do your best and forget the rest. Like, just give your best. Your best might not be the worst of someone else, or your worst might be better than someone's best. So just focus on what the best you could do, and that's the only thing you can do. So no need to worry about anything else.
As said, we are coming to the conclusion, as Bhaiya said, that we should not focus on the result. We should be loving the process towards going to the final finishing line. So thanks a lot, Aditya Bhaiya, for coming from and taking some time from your tedious
Thank you for having
schedule.
me, sir.
Thank you. We, DS's Developer Student Club, is pleased to have you and hoping to have you in future go. And thanks a lot for coming. And also love to thank entire team, core team of DS's Developer Student Club for organizing such an amazing series of workshops and webinars in order to help students to understand how to participate in the Solution Challenge 2021. I hope you all are heading towards it and also learned a lot of things from today's session. Again, on behalf of Developer Student Club, Liberty Professional University, I thank you, Aditya Bhaiya, for coming and having a great session with us. Thanks a lot. Signing off. See you, everybody. Take care. Tada. Bye.
Thank you. All the very best, everyone. Thanks for listening patiently. Thank you.